There are few things in this world more pathetic than corporations going out there trying to act like what they're doing is good, seeing that all of the feedback is negative, and then them trying to hide it as if none of that feedback is actually coming out. Not surprisingly, Marvel Comics is trying to do that with Amazing Spider-Man. I don't know if you heard this. They're resetting it back to a #1 issue. Joe Kelly, most famous for writing Deadpool, but certainly has written Spider-Man in the past during the Brand New Day era, is coming on board, currently writing The 8 Deaths of Spider-Man. And while Doc seems to be very, very hopeful that he believes Joe Kelly will be able to come on board, do a good job, I, like most other Spider-Man fans out there, am deeply, deeply cynical about this. You can call me thinking cynical when it comes to the idea that Marvel Comics would ever even attempt to get Spider-Man right these days. They just want him to sit there as a complete pathetic loser, almost like the avatar of the Spider-Man group editor, Nick Lowe, and just be absolutely nothing. And every time they do this, they reset the character, yet never actually try to fix him. Not surprisingly, when they actually tweeted out that, hey, we're going to have unemployed Peter Parker some more, they got some negative feedback. And I do want to give a shout out to Bounty Into Comics, who had a really good article on this one. Definitely wanted to pick up on this with some of my own personal thoughts, but they started out like this. In the latest example of the stunning disconnect between the publisher and customers, rather than admit that absolutely no one wants to read another story about Spider-Man's life being reset to square one, Marvel Comics attempted to hide any and all negative replies to their Twitter announcement regarding their decision to return to that exceedingly dry well once again for their upcoming volume of Amazing Spider-Man. Even with their attempts to avoid such criticisms, the replies to said tweet were overwhelmingly filled with fans who are fed up with their continued abuse of the wall crawler. That's right. Marvel Comics HQ, whatever the official like Marvel Comics discussion thing that's associated with Marvel Studios or Marvel Entertainment, whatever it is, actually was trying to hide the negative replies until they realized, oh shit, every single reply is negative. And eventually they did let them reappear once again. Once they realized that this wasn't making anything better, in fact, it was just kind of encouraging people to let them know just how much they don't like the current state of Spider-Man coming out of the Zeb Wells run, which was exceedingly pathetic. One of the worst runs in Spider-Man history. I really like the Nick Spencer stuff because it appeared that they were going to get rid of One More Day. It seemed like that was the end goal. We got rid of Sins Past, One More Day stands. We had Peter Parker with his hand in his pocket, an engagement ring, ready to pop the question to Mary Jane. Unfortunately, Nick Spencer pops smoke. Zeb Wells comes in, fucks the entire thing up, makes him just as pathetic as he's ever been. No job, no direction, no real good friends, can't even really star in his own comic book. Mostly the villains were starring and Spider-Man was just kind of sitting in the background, not even doing anything about it. New girlfriend, thinks he's pathetic like everybody else. Aunt May still thinks he's pathetic. And people were rather negative that Marvel aren't promising any type of change. Hey, Peter's going to grow up. Peter's going to get a job. Peter's going to become responsible. Peter's not going to be a pathetic loser anymore. None of those types of promises that would have gotten people excited for Spider-Man, or maybe even the really big one. And you know what that one is? Peter and MJ getting back together. And the results were less than positive for Marvel Comics HQ. And as people replied to this thing, well, the official Marvel Comics HQ Twitter account made a promotional tweet regarding the upcoming run of Amazing Spider-Man. Their replies were inundated with tired fans expressing disappointment both at their favorite hero being once again run through the mud and the publisher's insistence that this is the story that they really want. This is what Adam Way said. It's honestly sad how Marvel continued to destroy their flagship character. I'm officially giving up on ASM. Nothing seems to change. Ultimate Spider-Man is the main Spidey comic for most people now. It is weird that Amazing Spider-Man is, without a shadow of a doubt, the flagship character of Marvel Comics. And I could see maybe having Peter go through the ringer, hit a low point in his life before he bounces back, being compelling storytelling and really making sense for the character. But they never bounce him back. He just gets lower and lower and lower. You know, recently, they did some really outrageous stuff with Batman, the flagship character for DC Comics. they took his money away, they took his house away, they took his family away. It only lasted months, or at least most of it only lasted a month. They took his money away for like 3 years, but for the most part, they gave him his stuff back, and he kind of bounced back. Unfortunately, Chip Zdarsky's doing the story, so it doesn't exactly elicit super duper outstanding responses to it. But they realize you can only take so much away from the character before you have to give at least some of it back to the character. In the case of Spider-Man, the one thing that they've really taken away from him over the past 10, 15 years or whatever is his dignity. You can't even respect him as a human being almost in the comic book, because he's just so aimless and such a loser. He's sleeping on ex-girlfriends' couches with your feminist agenda t-shirts and stuff like that, which was a pathetic moment in his career, but they never did anything to get him off of that. He's just kind of more pathetic and more pathetic the more you read the character. And I'm seeing way more people than just Adam say, you know what, after 20 years, I don't think Spider-Man's worth it anymore. Or after 30 years, I just don't feel like Amazing Spider-Man is a title that I want to wade through the bad times knowing that we're going to get good times eventually. Maybe in 5 years we'll get something as good as Nick Spencer's run, which isn't amazing, but was certainly good enough. And I don't think I want to go through another 5 years of whatever Dan Slott had to say about the character, or Zeb Wells, or what's currently going on with Justina Ireland and Joe Kelly. And people have just basically had enough. And there is an alternative out there for Marvel Comics. It's not 616 Peter Parker. It's not the real Spider-Man. It's Ultimate Spider-Man. But what separates that character from the mainline 616? He's in a loving, healthy relationship with Mary Jane. He's got a job. He's got kids. He's struggling, become a superhero and all that stuff, which makes sense for the character. He hasn't been Spider-Man nearly as long as Peter Parker in our universe. But it's all that stuff around it that makes the comic book so much more appealing, that this Peter Parker, while he's not perfect, he certainly has flaws. He isn't an absolute nobody. He isn't somebody that you can't imagine Mary Jane ever wanting to be with, which is basically what the 616 Peter Parker has become at this point. And it does appear, just based on what we've seen Joe Kelly doing during the 8 Deaths of Spider-Man, not so much with Spider-Man, but certainly with the Peter Parker stuff, that he also thinks Peter Parker's a loser. And I don't think any of that's going to get better. Shockingly, when you promise people that they're going to get more unemployed Peter Parker loser Spider-Man, the feedback was less than ideal. Another case in point, Anime Hunt said, so Peter and Mary Jane are still not back together. Paul and Shay are still around. Once again, the clock's been reset on Peter, again with no growth for his character. Nick Lowe is still editor. And again, another brand new day writer with no clue of who Spider-Man really is taking over as the main writer. You just can't help yourself from making the same mistake again, can you? And I do think a lot of this does come back to Nick Lowe as a Spider-Man group editor. I believe he's been there for about 10 years now. We have seen zero character progression on Peter Parker over that 10 years. Little spurts and maybe kind of interesting ideas that came out of there where Peter all of a sudden had his own company and stuff like that. That was kind of interesting. It could have went somewhere. Of course, they decided to take that away and make him a bigger loser along the way. And now we're stuck with Paul and Shay. All Shay does is talk bad about Peter, not only to his face, where she basically like, don't you think you should get a job today? Which I don't blame her, because if you were a female dating a male in today's society and he was 30 years old and he was jobless and he wasn't looking for a job, you probably would say, hey, how about you get a job, numbnuts, and be a contributing member of society or whatever. But I don't want to have to listen to a character in the book that's supposed to like the character having to talk to him like that. So Shay really isn't adding anything to the comic book other than making Peter look even worse. And certainly Aunt May's doing enough of that as it is right now. And now we're somehow stuck with Paul. How did we get stuck with this character? He's not even real. He's from another fucking dimension. Why have they not killed this character off? And now it appears he might end up being Venom. Did you read All New Venom? I'm sure that he was included at the end of that story for a reason. Maybe he's the new Venom. Marvel are stupid enough to do that. Nick Lowe is a dumb enough asshat to make a choice like that. And we're stuck with all this negativity and really bad creative that Zeb Wells, I don't know, basically just shit out. I don't think he was ever trying. I don't think he wanted to say anything particularly interesting with Spider-Man. This was the stuff that he came up with because he didn't really care. And now they're running with it rather than taking this opportunity as a fresh restart. Like, hey, it's number one. It's going to be an all new status quo for Spider-Man. We're taking him in a new direction. We're going to grow the character up. We're going to give him some progression. He's not going to be a pathetic loser anymore. And maybe you'll be able to respect not just Spider-Man, but Peter Parker once again, because Peter Parker is an enormous part of the formula when it comes to Spider-Man. You can't invest in Spider-Man if you can't invest in Peter Parker. And people are just fed up and they're kind of walking away. We're hearing it all the time. And I do take a little bit of umbrage as saying, oh, it's just another brand new day writer. It's the best brand new day writer. He had the one story that really stands out as good in that era. Joe Kelly isn't Zeb Wells. You know, he's not Dan Slott. He's not Colin Kelly and Jackson Lanzig. He's an accomplished writer. He's done things to elevate characters in the past. If you like Deadpool, you can thank Joe Kelly for that. Is he past his prime? Is this a character that he wants to work with and has a compelling story to tell with? I'm not really sure. Based off of 8 Deaths of Spider-Man, I would say no, but I'm not certain that that's the Joe Kelly story. Maybe he's just, taking the paying gig to do the Nick Lowe story that was supposed to tie into One World Under Doom and get Spider-Man to the next writer. He ended up getting picked up for that. So I do hold out just a cunt hair worth of hope that maybe Joe Kelly will recapture his groove and do something really cool with Spider-Man. But he's not just any other brand new day writer. He's not just some run-of-the-mill person. He's actually had success. And there is at least a chance under Joe Kelly that things could go better, maybe, that it could be exciting or something. But I don't think he has any plans to fix Peter Parker, and that's an enormous problem. And people are being overwhelmingly negative with their feedback, despite the fact that Joe Kelly, who has a resume of success and good storytelling, is on there. And they're right to do so, because the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. And in the case of Amazing Spider-Man under Nick Lowe, past behavior dictates that it's going to fucking suck. And Peter is going to be lame. Final set of critiques that came along with that were trying to be hidden, but they have seen the light of day now. Spidey Neon, not a single new or interesting thing announced, so why should I care? There is still no solution to the MJ situation. Same jobless, homeless plotline for Peter. Anyone who sports this book just proves they like wasting their time and money. Nichard101 said, Jesus Christ, things are dire when a character like Spider-Man can't even reach 100 issues between reboots. This is so pathetic. And I think that is pretty much the word that sums up the state of Spider-Man, the state of Marvel, really. But Spider-Man and Amazing Spider-Man being the flagship character in titles is absolutely pathetic. It's hopeless at this point. And why should people care? Well, Joe Kelly's coming on board. Well, what's the last few things that he's done with Spider-Man? He did Nonstop Spider-Man, Savage Spider-Man, and now he's doing 8 Deaths of Spider-Man. Not exactly premier level work on the part of Joe Kelly. We know that he can do better, but he hasn't been doing better as of late when he's dipped into Marvel Comics. I know that he does Man of Action, and it's almost like a side hobby right now, but he hasn't done much better. What's the track record of Nick Lowe? Complete and utter destruction of the character. They aren't introducing any ideas that would give anybody hope that things are going to change. If anything, the information that they placed out there would naturally make you infer that nothing will change, that it will never get better. And it is pathetic that they're constantly having to reboot Amazing Spider-Man. This is a title that, even with acceptable creative, not great creative, not even good creative, just good enough to where half the issues are pretty readable. You get a great one here and there. You get some downers here and there, but it's just, good enough, to get through there and satiate fan appetite for Amazing Spider-Man. Should be able to go 300 issues, no problem, on a single run, because Spider-Man is a brand unto himself. He's the biggest brand in comic books outside of Batman when it comes to selling individual issues. Batman's gone well over 150. I bet you since the last time Batman rebooted to a #1 issue, which I think this is volume 3, I bet you there's been 3 or 4 reboots of Spider-Man. Now Spider-Man has been coming out twice monthly and all that kind of stuff, But maybe you need to slow that down and come up with better ideas instead of just spitting crap out just so you can have it on the shelves and not really considering whether or not this is a story that Spider-Man fans want to read. I don't care if this is a story that Joe Kelly wants to tell. I don't care if this is a story that Nick Lowe really thinks is important. What's the most important thing, and something that's been lost in all of this, is this what Amazing Spider-Man fans want to pay for? And I think the overwhelming evidence is, at this point, no. Enough people are dropping off. They're just going to go to Ultimate Spider-Man. An alternative out there for them where they get to have Spider-Man with MJ, which people have been complaining about for like 15 years now, that they still are doing this is absolutely insane. And the sales on Amazing Spider-Man are never going to get better. Even with a writer of some pedigree like Joe Kelly, this isn't going to make it better. The only thing that'll make the sales get good again, and you can have high sales on Amazing Spider-Man and Ultimate Spider-Man, you can double dip on the fandom, is if you promise change that feels meaningful to the fan base, because I think they're tired. And now that they've tried to speak out, you try to silence them and hide their feedback on it. It just pisses people off more. And Marvel can't help themselves but to step on their own dick every single step of the way when it comes to Spider-Man. And it's absolutely pathetic, the state that Spider-Man's in right now. And it's absolutely pathetic that Marvel wanted to put something out there but didn't want the feedback. Oh, no, just consume product. Don't tell me whether you liked it. Don't tell me when it's not good. You're not allowed to let me know when we're not getting the character right. This is a one-way conversation. I get to speak to you, but you don't get to speak to me. That's not really how this works, certainly not this modern day and age with social media out there. If you want to go out there and promote the stuff, you better be ready, to take the slings and arrows for your shitty comic book, because it's been very bad for far too long. And put that in your pipe and smoke it, Marvel Comics and Nick Lowe. You guys are idiots. What did you think people were going to say? If you appreciate this, an honest perspective of comic books, obviously talking about Spider-Man here, but we do cover the entire gamut, and you would like more Thinking Critical YouTube, or you like what I'm doing here and you like to support the mission of Thinking Critical YouTube, the place to be is Thinking Critical Patreon. There's a link in the video description. Lots more podcasts, bonus videos, extra stuff going out there pretty much every single day. Hope to see you there very, very soon.